Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a journal page in my Faux Hobonichi. I actually just got this book at Walmart, and I've doodled a bunch of pages inside, and I kind of skip around. But today I've chosen to do this page with this quote in there. I'm not going to use watercolor paint today. I'm going to use these Lyra aqua color, like a pencil crayon. They're really nice. They're kind of like, I believe they're oil based, but they're also water soluble. I probably said that wrong, but anyway. So that's what is on my agenda today. I think I'm going to try to keep to kind of one color scheme. So I think I'm going to stay with warms. And if you'll look at I'll just stay, this blue shouldn't be here, but I'll stay in the theme, like the warm colors today, except for the leaves on the flowers, they'll be green. So I'm going to use kind of this dull green. Do they have names on these? These are made in Germany. Oh, this is a sap green. So basically you use them like a color pencil, and then after you're done coloring in, you'll go back with a watercolor brush or clear water, and you will add water to the page, and it brightens the color up. So if you notice, I'm not going real heavy with the color, because once you put the brush down, it'll bring out more color. The color kind of blooms. So I'm going to do the green, and I think today what I'm going to do, usually I'll do a color and then I'll go add water over the top, but today I'm just going to do the whole page with the crayon, and then I'll go back in and do all of the watercolor at once. I mean, you can decide how you would like to do it. You could use color pencil too. The difference between the color pencil and these, there's two things. If you leave these too long on the page, like after you've colored them and then add the water, they don't seem to blend as well. So I like to blend the color with water in the same sitting. You wouldn't want to leave it a week or two, because I don't know if it's the oil in the... I'm adding yellow now as an accent color to the leaves. I don't know if the oil gets dried out, and that's why they don't watercolor as well after the fact. That's my opinion. I'm also going to add yellow inside the flowers, because most flowers have a yellow center, and then I'm just going to work colors outward. I'm also going to use yellow behind this area. I'm going with a little bit darker yellow. If you keep it within the same color scheme, a lot of times it'll add a lot of harmony to your page. I'm a big, I'm big on really bright colors, but sometimes it's just nice to have the page have a little bit more monochromatic, or I don't think that's the word for it. I don't use these a lot. That's why they're still very vibrant. So I don't know which. I hope I'm using the colors in the right order This does look a little pinker, so. And what I'm going to do now is go in and add some details into the flowers. You don't have to be totally perfect with this, because when you put the water on, you can go back and blend it out a little, because it is water-based, so you can blend around. So this is a pink, I believe, a dark pink. You can also, after you add your water and get everything blended out, you can wait for it to dry, and the places that need more color, you can layer with this. You can do that with any paint, but it's nice to know that you don't have to stop at the first layer of color. You can put it down, let it dry, and go back and add your more color to it if you wish, if it's not as bright as you would like. These tend to get pretty bright though, so I have this lighter pink here that I'm gonna put on the flower. And then I'm actually going to grab a purple, I believe. Kind of staying in the same tone, but not really. I'm just going to use the purple on a couple flowers. You can sharpen these. I tend to don't want to waste the pigment, so I color on the edge or do something like that so that I can use the whole thing. I think for right now I'm going to leave the swirls white, but I am going to go back in with a different gradation in the background here. I think I'll just keep it red and orange. And I'm coloring lighter so that they'll blend maybe easier together. It's fun to try different mediums. This is not considered watercolor, but it works like a watercolor. It's a lot easier to blend colors with these oil-based. So I'm going to go with a dark orange and then a lighter, brighter orange. I'm going to put a layer between the dark, or the lighter orange with the darker orange. And I'm going to go with the lighter orange, kind of a bright. And you can't leave these in heat or like in a window or or in a really hot room, because they will melt. This one did melt. They're very soft. I think when it was shipped to me, a couple of them were melted. So if you order them, I would order them in the spring or fall so that you don't, during shipping, they don't melt in your on the way to you. I think I want to put really light yellow inside here, but I don't want it to touch the black. So you have to decide which one I want here. This one's a really light yellow, but it has another color on it, so I'm just going to kind of peel it with my finger here, because I don't want that color coming through. It looks like it was blue, so if I put it on the page with a blue and the yellow, it's going to make green. So I just cleaned it off with my thumbnail, and I'm going to color in just the inside. I want to give it a little bit of a border, like a white line between the yellow and the black there. In fact, I might go with a darker yellow for the end part there. I was going through journal pages that I had done something like this with a color, with one of the swirls, and I really like it. That's a benefit of flipping through your journal pages and keeping your journal pages around, so that you can go back and say, oh, that's kind of a cool technique. Because I don't think I've done that very often, but it looked kind of cool on the page, so I'm going to try that today. And if it doesn't look good, I can just go to the edge, you know, if I don't like it after I have it on there. I can just spread that pigment out to the edge of the image. So I went from a light yellow to a bright yellow to this light orange color. I always add details after the fact. So I use Sakura, these gel pens. They come in many different colors. They're moonlight jellies, and they pop off the page. So a lot of times I will use that. Okay, I'm going to clean up here just real quick. Still see the page there. I'm going to get some water and a couple brushes. I want a couple different brushes. I'm going to use this one for medium areas. I have to find a fine tipped brush. Just kind of a fine tip brush, but let me see if I find another one. I have the hardest time using fine tip brushes because they don't always keep a good tip on them, which drives me nuts. And I'm also going to grab kind of a flat. All I can find right now is this angled brush, so I will try it with that. So I have this little container of water. I keep it with a lid because I tend to spill all the time. So just plain water, and these are my brushes, kind of a angled flat. You could just use a flat, I just can't find one right now, and two tinier tipped ones and then a medium tipped one. So on the background, I'm going to use the bigger angled brush. See how that blends really well? You have to be careful with the pens you use, because when you use these oil-based water-soluble oils, sometimes the oil in the pen that you use, if you use a pigmented pen to draw your design, will run with the oil. And luckily, the pen I had was just a permanent black pen on this page. I'm using a really cheap journal, a bullet journal from Walmart actually, and the reason I I just wanted a journal that I could play in and not worry about. I've used Hobonichis before. They're wonderful. Sometimes I don't want a dated, sometimes I don't journal for a while. So if I have a dated one, I feel like I've used it up, didn't use it enough. So see how that it's a wonderful blending and it went really fast. On these cheap ones though, is I actually tape 2 pages together when I first get the journal. So there's 2 pages there, and I don't use the back page because a lot of times the pen will come through. So I just draw on 1 page, and then I don't do this as a daily practice, which I have before. It's just that sometimes life gets so busy that I don't have time to do this on a daily basis. And a lot of times now I just use an inspirational quote or something to get me through the day if I'm feeling down, or I also will journal on the page too. I try to keep them generic now because I did go through a time where I was spilling my guts on a page, but the problem with that is if ever someone else reads it, I will feel really bad if I said something wrong or negative. Not really wrong, just negative. So see how the colors blend just magically with this? Because they're a soft crayon-like material, they blend really well and the color comes out on the page. But once they dry, like up here, they dull out again a little. So you could add more color on top if you needed to. But that's what I love about these, is they have such vibrant colors. And I'm using a wet brush, but not a dripping brush. It's wet, but not crazy, like dripping off the brush. Also, if you go light to dark, I tend to like that effect better. It makes the colors blend better for me in my head. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but usually I go light to dark so that when they blend together, it's the light color emerging with the darker color. Not all the time, but I tend to do that mostly. Majority of the time. It helps to make a quicker page. Watercoloring takes some time because you're waiting for things to dry. This tends to be a little bit more dry a little quicker because this down here I had just done and it's already fairly dry. So I'm going to change brushes. I'm actually going to go to one of the thinner brushes so that I can do the swirls. And since usually I would wait for this to dry more because there's still a little bit of a wet spot, but I'm going to be really careful and just go in here and add some watercolor. You can even out the edges by dragging some of the pigment over if you want to get closer to the edge. I think that journaling to me is more of a meditative process, and I would probably benefit by doing it on a daily basis. I think that it adds to your life. I mean, when I was going through some pretty hard times in my life, my journal helped me, stay sane. It was like a good friend to talk to. So I did leave the white area. You can barely see it in the light yellow. I do tend to flip my pages also. So when I start doing the flowers, I will also use this brush. It's a fairly cheap brush, but it has a good tip on it still. I go through small brushes quicker than any other type of brush because I tend to ruin the tips of them. I must like be hard-handed or something. I don't know the reason, but I wish I could find a really good pointed tip brush that wouldn't wear out really quickly. Maybe that's other people's problems too, but that's definitely one of mine. That and a really good fine tip permanent pen that doesn't bleed. Yeah, I'm dreaming, I know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work the flowers like from the inside out, and hopefully they'll be dry by the next time I go through. So I'm going to start on the inside, and then I'm going to go back up and start on the next layer. And, or actually right now, what I could do is do the leaves, and then go back and do the next layer. Gives it a little time to dry. This paper is very thin paper, yet it takes watercolor pretty well. Just needs a more drying time, I think. So my goal sometime this year is to create a doodle book that I can put on Amazon, and then people could either order or download the PDF files, and so you could print it out on whatever color, whatever type of paper you like. I have worked on cardstock, I've worked on watercolor paper. You know, it just depends on what you prefer. Watercolor paper was made for watercolor, but it even is effective on really thin paper like this. So I'm going to go ahead, the middle of this flower has dried, and I'm trying to give each color a little bit of time to dry before I go back so they don't smear into each other. Then again, if the colors aren't dark enough or different enough, then you can go back and layer on top. Remember that as you go, that it doesn't have to stop with this layer. You're going to have more depth the more layers you put on, actually. Before I go, I'm going to show you another way to use those crayons instead of just directly onto paper. So I'm going to skip around. So I'm not going to do this layer because that layer is wet, but I can do this layer on the outside of the flower. And let that dry. The colors change a lot, so before you start on your page, you might want to swatch your colors on another piece of paper so that you know what color you're using, or what color it will be once it's wet, because it colored, that was a purple and it's really a light purple, which is good. It works for this page, but maybe you wanted a dark purple. That's why it's good to swatch pigments before you actually use them. And a lot of people just enjoy the swatching process. You know, just basically finding out what colors are, and leave that, you know, the swatch with your set so you can go back and look at it. That's one thing I don't always do, or I would have showed you, or I would have known what colors we're going where. Maybe you're just really good and could remember what colors would go where. So I'm almost done with this. This is a very warm page with yellows and pinks and just a hint of green. So now you can either go ahead and add your pens over the top. You could even go right over the top because these are opaque. You can go over the top of lettering that's in black. You can add your white posca details. I'm going to show you a technique with these. So let's say I wanted that purple a little darker. What I do is grab that purple. You can dip it right in water and go over things, but to me it makes it too thick and I don't like it. So what I do is go use the brush and go right on the crayon. Get a nice amount of paint and paint right on there. See how you can add a lot darker color that way? You could also just color again on top of what you've done if you wanted. But if you're just going to go back in and add a dark color here and there, and this purple didn't seem to want to lay down real thick, so I'm just going to use it this way and add that pop of purple to the page. Just getting my brush wet with water and then brushing it onto the crayon and then onto the page. So I'm going to call that good for the actual base of it. And now I'm going to go back in with these pens and color it. I just have to figure out what I want to do here. Sorry. Gotta take a moment and think. Usually I'd wait for this to dry. It's still pretty wet, but I'm at least going to color this in. I think I'm going to add a pattern with orange. A lot of this is orange and yellow. It's just putting squares on top of this to kind of set it back a little further. It really, that black pops. You can, if you like that, that's great. Sometimes I would leave it that way. Sometimes I'm just trying things to see if they work, and sometimes they don't work. You can even go back in and add like dots around the flowers. Adding more depth to your petals. You can also stop where you finish the background if you're not into adding more stuff on top. Whatever you choose to do is perfectly fine. I tend to turn the page as I go here, like turn it around and around with that water, because I keep thinking I'm gonna tip it over. Sometimes these pens get blocked, and I usually have a piece of paper right next to me to kind of You have to wait till they dry before you can go back over them also. Or it really just gums up the page and gums up the pen. So go over it once and then go back and fill it in if you need to. I don't know if these pens are acrylic based or what they are, but they're very opaque. So they have a lot of pigment in them, and as they dry, they'll get lighter in color. I just love these pens. They make a lot of different types of pens, but for journaling, I love adding details with these pens. I probably overdo it sometimes. So since that's dry, I'm going to go over it because it didn't turn out bright enough for me. So going back over the top. A lot of times I'll put dots on the swirls to make them fall into the background a little. I don't know why I love to doodle with swirls and flowers. It's just something that I've done for a while. Years. You could add lines in your flowers. You could even do a different color up here. I'm going to keep it the same for now, and I'm going to actually go back and do a color inside that swirl, just for fun. These journals are just something for you, so you can use any color you want. You can use any technique you want. Maybe that's why it's healthy to journal, because no one's telling you what to do. It's your thing. I'm giving you permission not to do it the way I'm doing it, I think is what I'm saying. I mean, if you love doing it my way, please go ahead. But if you want to do it your way, that's great. I would love to see it. Eventually, I'm going to include a link to the actual black and white image of this page so you can print it out for yourself, but I haven't decided on how I'll do that. I was thinking that I would just offer it on Etsy for like 50 cents a page, and you could choose whatever pages you wanted to. But then I realized that Amazon prints books from PDFs, and I could just have a whole book for you to download. Or I could do it both ways, because maybe they want to try a page and not order a whole book. A lot of people are under a lot of stress nowadays, and it would be nice to have something for them to just sit down and play with color and forget about their day or write about their day. So if you could actually, I'll link where you can not have a quote in there to have a blank page, but I like to do these draw lines in the backgrounds of areas. This one doesn't have a lot of place for writing, but if I give a blank, you could just draw lines with these same pens and then write over it. And I'll give an example here in just a second. Let me get this finished. Okay, So on another one of these pages, I did some writing, and if you can see, I drew the line with this purple pen over the top of the blue, and then I wrote in there. So you could do a quote. I'm going to include other pages too along the way, but you could do a quote, and then you could do some journaling about that quote. But see how different my pages are? Kind of a blue, bright, colorful page to a, it makes it a little bit more soft. So I'm going to add some other colors in the flowers here. Maybe lines in this one. This set of pens has like 4 different pinks, and they're really varied. It's kind of fun to include. That got kind of wild there. So I really love this color against yellow, so I'm going to give it a pink line on the inside of this. They come in different thicknesses too. I think this is the smallest one, so I kind of do a little scribble line instead of, I thought I was getting the thicker pen, but I got the thin ones, which is good. You can journal with them really well, or add lines to your page really well, because it makes it a little bit more subtle looking. So I think I'm going to do a different color up here and the same color on the inside of this one. So I love Posca pens too. I don't want to put the dots. I like adding dots and things with them, but I thought it'd be fun. Oh, I have to, sorry, hold on. So these pens get, I'm going to move this because these pens be too. So if you take this nib out, I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I don't know if I can get the nib out. Okay, I can't get the nib out right now, but you can pull that nib out. But if you just wash the nib and then use a towel to scrub the tip off, then, hold on. I am not prepared today. So you can just scrub that nib, but you can also take it out and rinse it off in water too. But now that you have it cleaned, you have to like press it down so you start getting your paint out again. You can also refill these with acrylic paint or ink, acrylic ink. You can also order, I don't know if you can order ink from Posca, but you can order it from Montana Ink. Anyway, and then I use this to make little dots or to highlight the leaves of the flowers. Just adds a little bit of whimsy. You don't have to do any of this, but if I was to get any kind of, my favorite marker is actually the Posca white markers. You could use any white acrylic pen. It also, if you made a mistake somewhere, you can mostly get rid of it. If you would have to go over it a couple times, but it does cover up mistakes really well on white paper, if the paper matches. So those are little white dots. You can hardly see them up there in the, but it's also fun to put, you know, dots around flowers, the petals. You can also put a white dot over the top of the colored dot, or you can add a little white detail to a flower. You can add highlights on your leaves, or highlights on whatever, your words. You could add all over texture somewhere if you wanted to. Put dots on this flower. Some of them you barely see, but they do add some interest, even if they're subtly there. So there you go. This one's really spring-like, and right here you can see that the pink came over, and I just touched that up with the white, and you can't see it anymore. So it's a good pen for doing that. You could also go in and add a line in the orange here and kind of mellow out that look a little, so it's not so, maybe a little bit more subtle. You could also go in with black and do that too over the top of the orange. I was going to put another color over the top there. Okay, so I probably want a darker color over there. Or a brighter color. I could do green. Do a darker pink. I might just go with the darker pink. You could do purple too, but I think since we have pink on the inside, I'll do purple on the out. Or pink. Kind of a pinky purple. So I'm just going to do the outer edge of the swirl. I'm just going to fill that in because I missed it with the... You could also put words on the inside of your swirl too if you wanted. This color is a little bit more subtle than that pink on the inside. And hold on. It's getting clogged up. Yeah, it's kind of a purple pink. You know, I was just thinking that if you had one of these journals where you wanted to just put, if you didn't want people to read what you were really journaling about, you just wanted to have a page with a quote that maybe dealt with what you were dealing with, and you could always use washi tape to tape the bottom and slip your journaling page in back of your quote. And then you could date them, and you could, if you ever didn't want someone to read them, you could just throw away the writing part, the written part. For a long time, I didn't do this kind of visual journaling because I was so busy doing the writing journaling that it was time, at that time I needed to work out things using words, and I actually burnt a lot of those journals because I was really negative during that time period, and at some point I just needed to get rid of that. I don't like being a negative person. Or angry. Maybe I was more angry than negative. Sometimes you have to just work through that period of your life, and it's okay to get rid of it if you don't want it around anymore. The journals, I mean. So this pen is having a little bit of a hard time over the top of the crayon that's darker. I don't know if that's really an issue. I haven't used them that much together. So I don't know if it's because it's thicker. I don't know if the pen is just picking up part of the crayon in the little ballpoint, which could be what's happening. It's just getting a little scratchy while going over it. It doesn't do that with regular watercolors, so that's why I'm bringing it up. You might have a little bit of a difficult time over the top of those kinds of pages. Anyway, so this is your page for today. Oops, sorry. That's your page that I created today. Again, we use the Lyra Aqua Color pen, crayons, I guess you would call them. This one, I don't know how many different sets they come in, but this is the colors. These are the colors that come in this set. There are 48 different colors. I'm sure that they have a smaller set and a larger set, like almost everything else. And I also used these amazing Jelly Roll Moonlight pens. This was a set that I purchased. I also used a Posca white marker. And then just various brushes. But the brushes were nothing special. They were just watercolor brushes that I have acquired over time. You guys have a fabulous day. And I hope to do another